What can we do as parents when our PDA child or teen is at risk of harming themselves or others? So putting others in danger or putting others in a situation of physical harm. So, hi, I'm Casey. I'm the founder of At Peace Parents, and I've worked with hundreds of families raising pathologically demand avoidant children and teens, and have supported parents to help them find peace on their journey and also be able to stabilize their homes. So today we're going to talk about a topic that is both near and dear to my heart and difficult to talk about because it involves violence. So just panning out, I want to talk a little bit about why this matters to me. So not only have I experienced this as a mom who's raising a PDA child who's now 9.5 and no longer violent, it also relates to a core value of mine and my business, which is nonviolence. And actually the vision of At Peace Parents, stated vision, is to reduce violence on a societal, individual, and household level. So violence towards self, violence towards other, and intergenerational trauma and structural violence. So this is a topic that's near and dear to my heart, but it's also a very vulnerable topic and triggering topic to parents. So we're going to go through this the best we can because I want to be able to give you guys some clarity about how to think about this, how to define what you're doing, how to make decisions, and 5 ways to support yourself if you're finding yourself in a situation where you are at risk of physical harm, your child is physically harming a sibling, or the PDA child or teen themselves is at risk, like they're eloping out the front door towards traffic, okay? So the first thing I want to do is introduce the concept of risk mitigation, okay? So on social media, I've talked a lot about things like accommodations and declarative language and, signaling safety and even de-escalation, which is a strategy that you can use to de-escalate a panic attack when your PDAer, regardless of age, is in their survival brain and having a fight-flight response. However, that is a strategy, right? Where you might get low on the ground, you reduce your speech. If you do say anything, it might be a minimal declarative sentence like, I'm here for you, or I'm so sorry, this is so difficult. And you're mindfully signaling safety non-verbally, mammal to mammal, with your body, with your tone, and with your facial expression, right? But whenever we share that strategy, rightfully, a lot of parents comment, well, I can't do that because I'm being attacked, or I can't sit on the ground and signal safety when my kid's running out the front door. And that is absolutely valid, and I am with you, and that has happened to me. So today we're going to talk about risk mitigation, which simply means choosing the course of action that is likely to result in the least amount of harm for everyone involved, okay? And this might be when a sibling's involved. It might be when the level of fight-flight is so much that you're constantly being attacked. It might be when your PDAer has taken an object and you're afraid they're going to harm someone or themselves with that heavy object, for example. Okay, so when we find ourselves in this situation, when we find ourselves thinking, well, I can't really use these strategies because I'm in fight or flight, I'm in total survival, we want to start thinking about switching from strategies or tactics and moving towards decisions as parents, okay? And that's a mindset shift because we all want there to be a solution or a fix in these moments. And I will tell you right now, I don't have a magical solution to this because there isn't one. And that is what I'm going to talk about with you. Okay, but before we begin with the 5 things that we can focus on and find agency in to support our children, I want to just tell you a story to illustrate how I started thinking about this 4 years ago. Okay, so 4 years ago, we had just moved from Washington, D.C., where I used to work full-time in a research organization. I had left my job in order to figure out what was going on with my son and to provide one-on-one undivided attention and caregiving and de-escalation, all the things that he needed, even though I didn't fully understand his neurotype at the time. So we had moved to Michigan, which is my home state and where we are now. And at the time, our finances were pretty tight. We had switched from 2 full-time parents working to 1. We moved to a small town to be near family, but the pandemic hit and I was the primary and at times only caregiver. And I found myself with the constraint of a 1.5-year-old and my 5.5-year-old externalized PDA child who was quite violent. And I didn't have another child care support. I didn't have my husband available. I didn't have in-home support because it was during the pandemic and we were isolating. And I remember a moment when I was in the living room. Actually, I just had 2 moments that I'm thinking of around the same age where both my 1.5-year-old, William, he was screaming and climbing up the stairs because there had been an altercation, and my 5.5-year-old PDA-er, Cooper, ran out the front door without clothes or shoes or socks. And there was this moment where I had to engage in risk mitigation, which means I'm having to decide the course of action that is least likely to result in harm for William, myself, and Cooper, okay? This is a harrowing moment when we find ourselves in this situation as moms, dads, parents, caregivers, because no option is a good option. It's not a good option for me to run out the front door and leave my 1.5-year-old halfway up the stairs screaming and with no one else there. Okay, it's also not a good option for me to run up the stairs and comfort my 1.5-year-old when my 5.5-year-old is in full-on flight mode without shoes and socks, running God knows where in the neighborhood that I live in, okay? And so that's an example of a moment where there's not a strategy, there's only a decision, okay? And so the decision is a harrowing decision, and in that moment, I decided to quickly get my 1.5-year-old down the stairs without spending time comforting him, run out the front door, and try to locate and bring back my 5.5-year-old, okay? And of course, once I did that, I had to pick him up and move him back to the home, which is a violation, or I'm restraining him in a sense. I'm moving his body without his consent. And what we know about the neurotype and how the brain works of pathologically demand avoidant children and teens is that any perceived or neurocepted loss of autonomy, or me being above him, which I certainly am if I'm picking up his body and moving it, is going to activate him even more. It's going to push him further down into that survival brain, okay? So when we are moving into risk mitigation, we're making decisions that will look and feel like a very intense rock and a hard place, and it will feel like there are no good options because there really aren't, okay? There really isn't an option C, but most of us, myself included, get stuck looking for that option C, which is the search for the strategy that's going to fix it. Let me give you an example. You have a PDA child or teen who's physically harming a sibling, okay? So you do the analysis as a parent and you decide, I need to set a boundary. And you might remove the younger child and yourself from that room. But in doing so, the PDA-er perceives that something was taken away from them or that there's a consequence, and it's going to drive them deeper into that survival part of the brain, which is perceiving threat, and it can escalate the violence, right? The decision itself, there's a cost to it, which escalates the violence because there's more threat perceived. However, if you don't remove the sibling or put yourself physically between them, then the sibling gets harmed. What we need to understand is because of the unique neuroception and neurobiology of these children with a nervous system disability, those are the only 2 choices, okay? There isn't an option C. And most of the time, parents are looking for, how can I do this? How can I set a boundary so that there's no more activation. But that is the nature in this moment of where they are in their survival brain of threat. Okay, another example, and this, I hear this a lot. I've had lots of families come through my program where this is the case, and I have so much compassion for it. And I just wanted, if this is you, tell you that, like, I'm sending you love, and